Good afternoon, this is Angela with Parka's Permaculture. I'm in the living room of my home here in Portland, Oregon, and a package that I ordered has just arrived, so I wanted to open it with you all. It is pretty big and heavy. I don't know if I can lift it up in the camera view. It's big and heavy. Yes, it's not from an ideal location to have ordered it, but I did what was in my budget and I couldn't find it elsewhere. So as my permaculture garden becomes more and more mature and my fruit crops produce more and more abundantly as the years go on, we're now in the 14th year of this garden, I find that even though my kids are growing and consume a huge amount of food, there's a limited amount of fresh fruit that you can eat in a given setting, right? And so this time of year, there's a lot of plums, there's a lot of apples. This week, I'll be harvesting my pears and sharing that process with you all. There are multiple varieties of plums. There's hardy kiwis, there's aronia berries, and grapes. Tons and tons of grapes, and apples, also apples. So we just picked a bunch of Cox's Orange Pippin apples earlier, yesterday, I think, or the day before. Oh yeah, and Ruth isn't over here with one of the dogs. She just said also ground cherries, Cape gooseberries. So all of these things are coming out of the garden, and I can as much as I possibly can.
Raspberries.
Oh yeah, golden raspberries. I can a ton. I make fresh fruit desserts whenever possible. I made a plum crisp yesterday that we're still finishing up today. I dehydrate a bunch. I make jams and jellies. I, make some adult beverages with some of that stuff. It used to be back in the day that I made a lot more like mead and melomel, and that's a mead that's made with fruit. And I haven't done that as much in the last several years because I've just been too busy. So I'm struggling to use up all of the fruit produce, and we have a little Honesty Farm stand that is open now and then to share extras. I anticipate it will be open quite a bit in the fall because I'm going to have a lot of persimmons and medlars and quince to share. So one of the things that I realized when I made grape jelly last week was that I had far more juice than I needed to make grape jelly. And we aren't like really big juice drinkers, but the way of making grape juice at home, if you don't have a juicer, is kind of labor intensive. And so I ended up getting, about 3/4 of a gallon of juice, and my kids drank it in less than 24 hours. And I thought, you know what, we haven't really utilized that kind of pathway to consume more of the produce out of our garden. And juice freezes really well, and you can can it. And so I thought, let's go ahead and invest in a little press. I thought this is a great way to not only make more grape juice, but also to make more apple cider. I use most of my apples for apple chips and then apple sauce, apple butter, mostly applesauce, and fresh eating, baking. I have something in my eyeball. So I bought a press. I'm going to open it and then show you how I assemble it. And hopefully this will be a way to kind of further and more efficiently utilize the produce coming out of my garden. So let me move it down here and I'll show you. Okay. Now I did not invest in a grinder as well. That was over budget for us. But I also have a food mill, and I also have, like an apple core slicer that was my mother's. And I figured those will be tools that I can utilize, and I can also just have me and kids chop up apples for the press. So you can't put like whole or even quartered apples in. It has to be kind of like macerated a little bit. But grapes can go in whole. And we have lots and lots of grapes, and it's almost Concord grape season. I'm scaring the dog. Why do they repackage it? So much packaging. Okay. Oh, this is really heavy. Okay, so here we go. I believe I'm gonna have to assemble this whole thing based on the video description. I realize that I'm like the weird, quirky neighbor in the neighborhood, but I don't know if you can hear, one of my neighbors is using their leaf blower, and every time someone in the neighborhood uses a leaf blower, I'm like, proof of concept that leaf blowers should be illegal. They are so flipping loud and annoying, and also completely unregulated in terms of the amount of carbon monoxide and other pollutants that they put out into the air. And he's coming up the driveway. It's gonna get loud for a minute. All metal stand, and you can see the cider press will sit on top of this, and then the juice will come out here. Set that down. So this is completely unassembled, and I will be putting it together for you all. Different mechanisms. The press. Feels like I've made a trip to IKEA, except it's actual wood and not particle board. All slats come bundled together. I'm gonna need to get a screwdriver. It looks like I need a Phillips head here. I'm gonna go get that. So this should all be enameled cast iron. It's quite heavy. Oh, and it comes with a bag to catch all the little bits, directions. So I'm gonna start assembling. Okay, so here looking at the instruction manual, it looks like I have all of the parts here. And I chose the mid-size, so these come in various sizes. And I think mine is like 3.2 gallons. For me, I felt that was worth it. The 1 gallon was not gonna be sufficient to process all of the apples and grapes that we have, and probably pears as well. So over here, so you have to assemble the barrel yourself. So it comes with 2 metal rings. It's these guys here. And I'm gonna have to go get my screwdriver and put them together, and then also put the pressing plate together. And put the base together. Okay.
This is the part where I realized I was going to need to switch from my screwdriver to my impact driver if I was going to get this project done in a reasonable amount of time without destroying my wrists. So assembly was a little bit fiddly and the screw holes were not particularly well drilled, but I listened to a great podcast episode from a local podcast, Behind the Bastards, on the war on vagrants. Highly recommend it if you have not heard it before.
Okay, I have all of the slats assembled, and I wanted to show you a few things on here. The craftsmanship is not quite what I would want. You can see here, the welding is not great. You can see the screws are really soft and strip out easily. Over here, you can see they're not all cut very nice and even. So, you know, I guess you kind of get what you pay for a little bit, although this was not cheap. The wood's pretty dinged up in a lot of places. Let's see if I can find another piece here. Here's another one. Again, not even along the bottom. Difficult to put screws in. Some go in quite easily and some really do not, despite backing up and going again. They strip really easily. This one is loose and I have to take the pliers and get this screw out.
I went to screw the metal plate onto the pressing block and noticed that The holes were supposed to be pre-drilled, but they weren't there. So I took the tip of the screw and I marked through the pressing plate onto the wooden block where to drill the holes, and then needed to go get a little handheld drill and pre-drill the holes. Total assembly took about 40 minutes, and I want to tell you how it went.
Okay, it's the next day, obviously, and I have finished putting together the press. I was not able to finish last night because I lost too much of the light, because I ended up needing more time to finish this plate right here. It has this red metal piece on top of this wooden block, and the holes were supposed to be pre-drilled for it, and they weren't. So I had to go get a drill and pre-drill them. So here's my thoughts on putting together the cider press, and in an upcoming video I'm going to be pressing apples and grapes and talking about how well it works. I don't have time to do that today, but I do want to talk about putting it together. So this press, it comes in multiple sizes, and I think this one is 3.2 gallons, and I felt like the 1 gallon was not large enough for our family, and this was a more sensible size. It was a stretch of the budget to afford this one. However, a full-size cider press can be $1,500. So this one for under $200 seemed doable, especially for the amount of juice that we're going to get out of it for the coming years. However, I don't feel that it was that well manufactured. You get what you pay for, right? And I did get this off of Amazon. So the cage slats, which are this part down here, these were not even and not particularly well made. They were different lengths. Some of them had the holes pre-drilled well, and some of them were basically like barely drilled. And I noticed the top edge where they're supposed to be smooth and beveled so they don't snag on the juice bag here. I would say like 6 or 7 of them were not finished. They were beveled on one side and not the other. I also noticed that there was a chip in the cast iron enameling on the top here. I didn't notice it until I'd put the whole thing together. Otherwise, I probably would have sent it back and gotten a new one. I'm a little worried about what that means for rust in the future, but there's a pretty big chip in the enameling over here. So we'll just see. Doesn't seem to inhibit the function, but you know, for how much I paid, and having to do all the assembly myself, I kind of expected a little bit better quality, but the screws were really cheap and soft and stripped out easily. I found that for a number of these, if you're putting one together, don't bother. You saw in the video where I moved on from a regular screwdriver to using my impact driver as a screwdriver. This was necessary or I was going to kill my wrist. However, because the holes were poorly pre-drilled, it was really easy to start stripping the screws, and so I'd have to put them in partway, back them up, and do it again. And even so, I ended up with some stripped screws and some where I had to go and pull out the screw and then drill it myself first. So I'm interested to see how well this works. It seems like a good family size to handle harvests out of a family garden in sensible sized quantities, right? I can use this if I'm going to ferment cider and put it in like a little 1 gallon jugs on the counter and have enough juice left over for the family to drink. I can make large quantities of juice to freeze or can. So I'm excited to use this, be able to diversify the amount of products, the types of products that are coming out of my permaculture garden that my family will be able to use, and be able to preserve those in a sensible way. I have a long history of pressing cider apples with friends. I have been doing it for almost 20 years. And so I'm really familiar with how to use a large press, and I'm hoping all of those same techniques apply to this little one. So I will have a follow-up video where I actually show you the pressing of grapes and apples that we're going to be doing. We've started picking apples out of the garden. I don't have time right now because I have to leave and go take Bea to her mock trial. And thanks to everybody who left such lovely comments on my last video, where I had kind of an impromptu discussion with Bea and Ruth about unschooling. So thanks to the folks who watched that video. And I will be back very soon and hopefully give you another update on how well this press actually works. If you are considering one of these cider presses from X number of generic companies who list them on Amazon, be aware that the quality is not superlative and the assembly is a little wonky, a little finicky, and you get what you pay for. I'm still hoping it's functional. It was within the budget, and I have not seen a similar product that was made locally or another company through which I could purchase a product of this size. So thanks for watching today. I hope that you are enjoying fall in your permaculture garden. I hope that you are able to not let perfect be the enemy of good. Do the best that you can with the resources that you have and make use of what's coming out of your permaculture garden this fall. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and I'll be back real soon. Bye-bye.
A special thank you here to my patrons who made the purchase of this cider press and the making of this assembly video and upcoming pressing videos possible.